In many ways, the history of the University of Stavanger reflects the history of our city and our region. It revolves around the relationship between people and the sea. For generations, our region has been nurtured by the North Sea, providing people with food, employment, revenues and growth. During the industrial age, more people moved to the city and it started to grow. This progress was accompanied by a need for knowledge and expertise. Teachers, nurses, engineers, social workers, hotel personnel, traditional jobs which are all required by modern society. That's what got us going. And then, at the end of the 1960s, we discovered oil. Prospects were fueled by huge revenues and businesses turned eagerly towards oil. The new industry needed economists and engineers, and not least research and innovation. The University of Stavanger is a child of the oil age, and our development reflects the time when we grew up. However, today our expertise extends further. Today we are pioneers in social safety. Today we possess considerable expertise in technology and health. Today we conduct research on reorganization and sustainable energy. So where will it all lead us? We are strongly committed to constant interplay with the world around us. At the University of Stavanger, we will keep our ears to the ground, catch developments early and adapt education and research accordingly. I envisage a university with students who are eternally inquiring, openly involved and have a thirst for knowledge and understanding. A place where students are not driven by the thoughtless pursuit of gain, but by a reflective search for meaning and a drive to make the world a better place. We will challenge the well-known and explore the unknown. By casting a watchful gaze over our surroundings, we are addressing our work on research, education, and social involvement. That is the road we're headed on. I hope you will join us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the University of Stavanger. In winds of change, energy still is a key to continued progress and prosperity. However, so is green transition. Consequently, these are core elements of our strategy towards 2030. Our university has developed hand in hand with the oil and energy business over the last 50 years. Close cooperation has provided the best of education and research to the benefit of both parties. As new challenges are now looming, our ambition is to continue to provide relevant competence and knowledge for responsible resource management, readjustment and green transition. I therefore appreciate that these are important elements also of your agenda. And I thereby declare the Norway IOR conference for opened. Thank you all.
Yeah, and I wish you could be here. Yeah, I really wish. I was hoping to see your smiling faces, lighting with joy and expectations about this great highlight of the year, the IOR Norway conference, where science meet industry, where questions meet solutions, where lab analysis meet possibilities to larger scale tests in the field, and where people meet people. And of course, there is a distance this year between us. But in a way, I can feel we are united. And therefore, well, I can see you behind your laptop or your mobile phone at your home office where you are told your family, be quiet, I am watching the best digital oil conference in the world. Yeah, come on, let's use some big words. I mean, it's a big, big topic, an important topic. There are still some oil out there waiting to be recovered. Therefore, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce one of them who daily seek for solutions for the science, the industry, the economy, and solutions for the future of our common Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, directly here in Stavanger, I will now look upon and to the director of the IOR Center, the National IOR Center in Norway, Ying. Hello, Ying.
Hi, Tor Eivind. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Just as in the past.
Yeah, 2 years ago we were together in Tjodhallen. But how are you now?
Well, we see my eyes are almost squared with all the team's meetings.
Yeah, oh.
Yes, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
And yes, we're doing fine in our National IOR Center of Norway. And of course, we're looking forward to the future without the COVID, you know. But
you're tired now of these digital conferences.
Well, I think it does have its benefit in addition to what we normally work.
Yeah.
And it has forced us to really work more broadly, more across day and night.
Day and night.
Connecting international collaborators. Well, it's not just negative. Of course, we look forward for the normal. New normal.
New normal days.
New normal.
But as we know that there are several participants this year.
Well,
how many?
We have an increase.
Yeah?
Last year we had 200 plus, but this year we have 300 plus.
All around the world?
All around the world. And we have more than 130% more from industry.
Okay.
So that's fantastic. So
well, they got plenty of time now. So okay, Ying, you will open the stage now. So you're welcome.
thank you very much, Tor Eivind. It's really good to have you as a host, as a tradition. And also, I'd like to thank again for our rector at the university for his wise words and the nice introduction. So, dear IOR friends, I'm so happy that we're gathered again here in this 7th of IOR Norway conference, despite the COVID-19. Well, life has been in the past very hard for everyone and in the whole world. Last time we met face-to-face, that was 2019. If you remember, we had this fantastic opening with Tor Eivind, and also we have mingling discussions in the breakouts, we have posters, and we have a nice dinner with the entertainment. We exchange, but this year, as you said, Tor Eivind, is different. We will have some entertainment, hopefully. I hope you look forward for that. And also, with the skilled and very advanced technology today, we are going to make this conference very special, historical, and memorable. So, as always, we appreciate very much the strong support from the Norwegian government since it's the very start of our IOR Center. It was awarded 2013 for 8 years of the public funding. And it was opened with a very nice ceremony by the Minister of the Norwegian Ministry of Energy in a remarkable way that, if you remember, I'm sure some of you still, that IOR researchers come into the stage with a safety suit from helicopter, and also with smart water cans ready for IOR. So this conference was held for first time in 2015 for first time, and we always have support from the ministry holding the opening speech, either by minister, her itself, or the state secretary. And today we are fortunate to have the minister Tina Bru with us. She represents the younger generation, and with a large of her young life living in Stavanger region. And she really understands the oil and gas industry and the importance of maximizing utilization of these national natural resources for the best for the Norwegian society and for the world in the energy transition. So now, please be with me to welcome Minister Tina Bru for the opening speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, first, I would, of course, have loved to be with you physically today in my hometown of Stavanger for the IOR conference. But for obvious reasons, I am stuck in my office in Oslo, impatiently waiting for the opportunity to get out of here and visit some places and people in person. Hopefully, it will be soon. However, I am glad to be able to share my reflections with you today on the future for the Norwegian continental shelf as we look towards 2050. In a time where the global pandemic is demanding most of our attention, we have to be careful not to lose sight of one of the most fundamental long-term challenges that we face: reducing the greenhouse gas emissions while at the same time securing enough energy to sustain a growing global population. Changing the huge and complicated global energy system will take time. It will not always be smooth sailing, and there is no quick fix. Renewable energy is growing fast worldwide, and there are many substantial steps being taken to reduce and remove emissions from many sectors. But even in a world where we meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, there will still be a demand for oil and gas. I am certain that the Norwegian continental shelf is a petroleum province for the future. According to estimates by the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, still half of our resources are yet to be exploited. But still, we need to embrace the times that we live in, and we must change, evolve, and adapt. Our petroleum resources are and have been a blessing. And the way we have managed our resources is a true Norwegian success story. But going forward, securing support for the oil and gas industry will have to rest on more than just the fact that it creates huge wealth and secures many jobs. You would think that these two facts would be enough, but they just aren't. If the industry is to get a hold of the smartest, most ambitious young minds of today to continue its development, we need more. The industry must continue to showcase how it is a part of a more sustainable future. And as we are moving towards a low-carbon society, the petroleum industry has to do their part, and they are. Approximately 1/4 of our emissions originate from the continental shelf. In other words, cutting emissions offshore is inevitable if we are to reach our climate targets. And the industry has set ambitious goals for itself, and we are also seeing the results. As an example, the completed power from shore projects on the continental shelf have reduced the yearly emissions with 3.5 million tons of CO2. And we know there are many more projects being developed and matured as we speak. The government will continue to back these efforts through stable framework conditions, including support for research and development. We must also remember that this industry provides a foundation for opportunities in other sectors. The expertise and experience of the industry is key to cutting emissions, developing new technologies, and of course, creating new jobs, both in the traditional oil and gas industry, but also in other sectors. Some examples are space exploration, medicine, offshore wind, seabed minerals, hydrogen, and not least carbon capture and storage. And as for the latter, we have made substantial progress by launching Longship, the Norwegian government's full-scale CCS project. The project demonstrates a full value chain and will help to lower the costs for CCS. And these steps are crucial steps to reducing risk and with that hopefully helping other countries utilize the technology. Longship would not have been possible without the knowledge and the know-how accumulated after more than 50 years of activity on the Norwegian continental shelf. Norway's energy prospects, they are ever growing, and they are also becoming increasingly interconnected. With this backdrop in mind, we will shortly present a government white paper focusing on the long-term value creation from Norwegian energy resources. The goal is to assess the industrial potential of the Norwegian energy resources for future sustainable and profitable jobs. The white paper will cover a wide range of topics, including the continued development of a petroleum industry for the future, to renewables, offshore wind, deep sea mining, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, and not least how they're all more or less interconnected. Our policies and the white paper will attempt to connect these dots in a time where building industries and jobs is the very foundation of a low emissions future that is also just. So, what is the role of improved oil recovery in this future, where we are to secure both energy and low emissions? Highlighting some of the important results the IOR Center has achieved so far is a very good starting point. First, even though we at the present time have to practice social distancing, it is really about coming together. To cooperate, often across borders, connecting scientists, research institutions, and industrial partners, all sharing a common goal: improving the oil recovery on the Norwegian continental shelf. Second, a cleaner, safer, and more efficient production is an important ambition in our petroleum policies, and R&D is key to achieving this. And as a report from Horisont Energi last year pointed out, advanced methods for reservoir understanding and enhanced recovery has been a key area for increased value creation for the petroleum sector. And finally, gaining more understanding of geology and reservoirs has a wider impact than oil and gas production alone. It is, among other things, relevant for extracting seabed minerals and crucial for developing carbon capture and storage. This is the last year the National IOR Center receives funding as a research center for petroleum. Regardless of what shape, size, or form the center will take in the future, I would like to thank you for a very good job well done so far. I am convinced that the results will have a continued impact ahead and that you are well prepared for the future. Thank you so much for your attention, and I really do hope to see you all soon.
Thanks a lot to our Minister of Petroleum and Energy, Tina Bru, that wanted to be here in her home city, Stavanger. And in Stavanger, not far from the university, you will find the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. And Torgeir Stordal, there he is the Director for Technology and Coexistence. And he has followed this industry for, quite closely for more than 30 years. And to quote a friend of mine, Bob Dylan, things they are a-changing. So let's take off the glasses of the past and put on the glasses of the future and look 30 years ahead. Because what would be the big picture about the Norwegian continental shelf in 2050? To quote Bob Dylan, the answer, my friend, is blowing not far from Torgeir Stordal, I expect. You're welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon to all of you. Many thanks for the opportunity to meet so many IOR enthusiasts in one go. I am very pleased that the IOR Center organizes these annual conferences with an international attendance. The Norwegian Petroleum Directorate's primary objective is to contribute to maximizing the value from oil and gas production activities on the Norwegian shelf to the Norwegian society through efficient and responsible resource management. Health, safety, and environment and other uses of the sea are important considerations in this work. And we have a key role to ensure that all resources are realized that are profitable from a society perspective. IOR has therefore always been high on our agenda. The fields on the Norwegian continental shelf have on average a high oil recovery rate compared to many other offshore areas. Nevertheless, significant oil resources will not be recovered using current technology and plans. Efficient measures for increased recovery will be required to reduce the amount of oil left in the ground. And therefore, conferences like this one, which puts IOR in the spotlight, continue to be very important. Our production forecasts up to 2030 shows that production from the Norwegian shelf is now at a historic high, and that it will continue to rise in the coming years. But this realization of this forecast requires discoveries to be developed and that new projects are adopted at existing fields. Towards the end of the period and beyond, discovery of new resources through exploration activities will also play a key role. And likewise, developing and implementing projects for improved recovery will be an important contributor to maintaining a high production towards 2030 and beyond. And to achieve this, we need companies with the right competencies and the willingness to invest. There is still a substantial volume to realize in existing fields on the Norwegian shelf, illustrated for a selection of oil fields on this graph to the right. The grey columns show the oil produced, the dark green shows what is planned to be produced, and the light green is currently planned to be left in the ground. Hence, there is a significant IOR scope to work with. Drilling development wells is probably the most important measure to maintain and extend production on the fields. We are currently in a period characterized by a historically high level of drilling activity. The number of development wells has varied between 150 and 200 in recent years. And last year, 180 development wells were drilled on the Norwegian shelf. Drilling accounts for a large part of the investments, both for new developments and for operating fields. And technology development, just the automated and more efficient drilling, can help reduce costs. At the same time, it's important that companies also assess and implement advanced well technology to improve oil recovery. A great example of such an improved recovery project is the Snorre field redevelopment, which is illustrated here. This project will increase the field's recovery rate from 46% to more than 51%. The NPD has mapped the opportunities for recovering oil and gas from what we call tight reservoirs. This map shows the NPD's projections for oil and gas that could be present in tight reservoirs. And based on reports from the operators, the NPD has assessed 42 fields and discoveries on the Norwegian shelf, with in total 2 billion standard cubic meters of oil equivalents in place. The study estimated potential for improved recovery from such reservoirs to be in the order of 450 million standard cubic meters OE. New well and completion technology and more cost-efficient development solutions could realize at least some of this potential. But recovery from tight reservoirs need to be accomplished while existing infrastructure is in place. In other words, there is no time to lose. Several methods exist to go after EOR potential, which cannot be realized by just drilling more wells. And now I'm talking about the immobile oil. The figure to the left shows the potential on the NCS if the EOR method were to be implemented on the entire shelf. As you can see, miscible WAG with hydrocarbon gas, or CO2, and low salinity is thought to have the largest contribution. And the potential is assessed to be 280 million standard cubes of oil. The figure to the right suggests which methods are expected to be best suited to realize enhanced oil recovery for the various areas on the Norwegian shelf. And we believe there is potential for synergies and cost sharing by clustering nearby fields using the same EOR method. This should also open up for collaboration around field pilots, such that the relevant method can be qualified before a full rollout. We recognize this will not be easy, and we observe that the industry is reluctant. But we believe more should be done. Technology development and testing will be key, but it will also be critical to lower costs. Otherwise, these resources will remain in the ground. Towards 2050, the oil and gas industry on the Norwegian continental shelf will have to coexist with many other ocean-based industries. Already today, there are a range of new industries queuing up to utilize the large diversity of resources on the shelf. We have a large fishing industry, and offshore fish farms are now being planned. The focus on emission reductions will intensify efforts to further develop offshore wind and carbon capture and storage, CCS. Production of hydrogen for export to shore is not a possibility. And longer term, we likely see the extraction of deep sea minerals. Clearly, there might be areas where some industries will compete for the same area. So good management and distribution of the shelf area is important if we are to extract the value potential of the various offshore industries. But there may also be synergies to chase. This could be the provision of electricity by wind to production platforms, or injection of CCS or CO2 from CCS to EOR purposes. In my view, there is an exciting road ahead and plenty of opportunities to work on, also within oil and gas and IOR. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is André Morozov. I'm 35 and come from Brazil. I research about the value of data in the IOR contexts. How much data is enough? That's a question that many companies ask themselves. So my research is about finding ways to value this data and to answer how much is enough. I can do that by many ways. I've been doing a sequential approach to value the data in drilling campaigns.
Well, let's stay to the big picture and looking forward to 2050. And in similar conferences, this often when we talk about the future, you have to find some young ones that could be a part of the future, that could talk about the future and have opinions about the future. So we did it the same way. Here are two young women. Yeah, you're young when you're 31 years old. Yeah, of course you are.
Yes.
This is Sandra Cederholm and Karoline Lillehammer. You're both from this region, and you work in the oil industry, and you are young.
Yes.
Of course, yeah. But Sandra, could we be honest? Did you have plans to work in the oil industry?
No, not at all.
Why?
Well, when I grew up, I was pretty occupied about the environment and climate changes.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm not going to work in the oil and gas industry. It's going to get worse. But then as I grew older and I found out that you can't really do anything on the outside. It's actually when you're inside the company, you can contribute to change.
Okay,
so
if you can't beat them, join them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it was that big, dark, scary wolf This oil industry?
Well, when I was smaller, yeah, but not only the oil and gas industry. But now I feel I'm a bit smarter.
You're a bit smart. Let's hope so. Caroline, you have been smart your whole life since you're an oil child. Could I say it in that way?
You can,
Yeah.
yes.
Your parents, they...
My parents are both engineers and both have worked in the oil industry, and I'm from Stavanger.
From Stavanger.
I've studied petroleum engineering,
Yeah.
so in that
A lot of
sense-
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But you started to study in Trondheim.
Yes.
There you saw something.
Yes, so I noticed, not in my studies themselves, but outside in other student environments, I quickly noticed that there was a lot of skepticism around what I was studying and that business that I was kind of planning to go into in the future. So that also made me interested as to why is that.
Okay, so you had a bad conscience about your family and this industry then?
Not necessarily, because even at that point I did know that the industry contributed to a lot of our welfare as well, but
Yeah.
I was interested to maybe understand more around why all people don't feel like that, and why they might still feel like it's an industry that shouldn't continue. Say it like
But today, you both work in this bad or good industry, what we call it. Karoline, what's your job? Where do you work?
So I work in Shell, Norske Shell. There I work as a production technologist, so quite close to the actual kind of core business.
And Sandra?
I work in Aker BP.
Yeah.
And I work in the HSC department with data analytics and organizational learning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. But these two young women are special. They are 2 of 20
Yes.
young people who are connected, could we say it in that way?
Yes.
In something we call det store bildet, the big picture. That's why you are here.
Yes.
What is the big picture, Sandra?
The big picture is an initiative from Norway.
Norway, that's
Oh.
Norwegian oil and gas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, a bit too Norwegian.
And an employee organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where we as young people inform and talk to other young people about the industry and get the facts on the table with regards to the actual emissions we have as industry, but also to discuss like the possibilities in our industry. So it's not only about talking about the big picture of actual emissions, but also to see what young people are thinking about, what ideas they have, and as of the future for our industry.
Yeah. So, and you are 20 young people in the 20s and the 30s, talking to what kind of young people?
So our group, we actually talk to employees in Norway
Okay.
companies.
The industry themselves?
We talk to the
Yeah.
industry, yes, but then we have 2 other groups. So we have one group that talks to young politicians,
Okay.
and another group that talks to high school students.
Okay.
And then we meet together and kind of
Yeah.
learn
So
from each
you are paid of the industry to say what the industry want you to say?
We actually don't get paid.
Oh no, you go. Okay. Yeah.
So it's voluntarily, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not lobbying for them?
No,
No?
I won't say that, no. Because it's voluntarily to attend. And the reason I was selected in my company is because I had, or at least that's what I think, is because I'm interested in the field about the green future within oil and gas. And yes, we don't get any paid.
No.
And we're allowed to have our own meanings.
So you
and
can
opinions.
have your own meaning,
Yes.
and you don't get sacked if you...
No.
So what do you say then, Karoline, to the industry, to your companies?
Yes, so we try to show them a bit of facts, and we also try to tell them a bit about what we see from our other groups and from other Norway initiatives, the kind of the feedback from the younger generation, which is something the industry itself is also very interested in, right? Because it's their potential future employees, I guess.
So when you meet your friends, you listen what they think about the industry, and then you tell that
too.
to...
And I think more than anything, what we're trying to do is just to create a space to talk about these issues and kind of our industry and the climate challenges. To talk about it as a starting point.
Is this a way of this organization, Norwegian Oil and Gas, to don't be the defense all the time, but to be attack, to be in a more positive way?
Well, I won't actually say that. I don't agree.
No.
But
you should have your own opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it gives out facts, at least. I didn't know a lot. I've learned a lot since I started this project. For example, there's a lot of company tax that goes in every year that we don't think about is actually from the oil and gas industry. And that's a high amount. I think it's like 63%. And those facts are good to get out there, even if we all know that our business needs to change and we need to think new and greener, but it's also good to get those facts out so that we know that, okay, if we're going to change, we still will need the money for welfare. How are we going to get it? We can't just shut down. We have to think new first and slowly or gradually change.
But if we look forward to 2050, that's 29, then you will be 60 years old. Still young. And we know this industry has to change or are changing. What is the main thing to talk about then? According to changing, what is the big mission here?
So we need to look for new solutions, I think, and spend resources and money on that.
And think fast. We can't do it tomorrow. We need to start today. And we already are in a lot of oil and gas companies, like in Aker BP, we already have the Ærfugl field where we saved a lot of emissions last year. And I am sure a lot of other oil and gas companies as well are really trying to change how we look at our emissions and how we could save on them.
But is it panic time?
Maybe it should be a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you don't panic, like, let's get real, the investors will run away if you don't think in a greener way. That's at least what I think.
We need the investors.
Yes.
Who think green.
No, we need the investors, and if they are thinking greener, then so should we.
Okay, because it's 2021, I think, this year.
Yes.
It's 9 years until it should be 50% of the emissions should be away. Is that possible?
I think it's important to have bold goals.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should shy away from having that as a goal, even though I don't think we today know if it's possible or not. Maybe we don't even know the solutions. But I hope so. I think that we have come a long way just in the last couple of years in this industry, with a lot of big companies making those bold goals, and that's maybe the first step to actually doing something.
And the next bold goal is 2050, zero.
Yes.
Zero emissions. It's just 29 years until that.
No, you're true.
Is that possible?
I think it is.
Why?
Maybe
Why?
I'm stupid, but I think.
How?
Because things are happening really fast now. Just think about internet and everything else that's happened the previous years. Things go fast now, and if you're catching the train now, you might survive. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So I really think that it's possible if we don't sit on the fence waiting for anything, but actually make the change and see what technology is out there, and make a move.
Yeah. But how do you say to your bosses or the other companies, the train is leaving? How do you do it?
So one thing is we show them facts and numbers, right, and remind them of those goals that were made in the Paris Agreement and in the UN. And we have a quiz even before our presentation, and we test people, and it's actually not it's not that familiar to everyone, believe it or not. These quite simple facts.
What kind of questions do you?
So, like, by when do we need to have our emissions to zero?
Yeah.
That's 2050, right? But not everyone knows that in our industry is what we find, for example.
What do they answer? Playing what?
Yeah, depends. But I think that's the first step, right? To kind of educate and know the facts and understand where are we now, and then.
But you are young, definitely, and all your life you have heard about environment. The generation before, they have perhaps not. But is it like that you need to move a rock, move a mountain because they're old-fashioned, or?
No, I don't think
No?
so. Not in my own work situation, but also in the project. When we have our presentations, usually after it's finished, they're very interested in hearing our opinions or what we know other young people think. And I think that's a very positive change where big companies actually want to listen to younger people as well, and what ideas they have for the business.
So you will be the CEOs later then, that decides everything. Yeah, you agree. But that's the companies. But you have your friends, environmental friends, or what we could call them. What do they say now about this oil and gas industry?
Yeah, my friends, I guess, are mostly.
Okay, yeah.
So
You're this,
maybe
the
more
oil child, yeah. They don't care.
They do,
Yeah.
they do, of course. But I think they, as me, kind of don't think the solution is to shut down now, but that we indeed, as an industry, is kind of part of the problem, but that we can also change and be part
So
of
you have better friends?
solution.
I guess I have of both, but what I've seen is that a lot of them are not aware of the facts as well. So it's also good that we, as industry, dare to speak out, because that's just my impression. But before, we might have been scared to talk about it because it's a scary subject to talk about the emissions and our industry in an environmental context. But we have to talk about it, and I think also that's the way of us to change and show responsibility.
Is it a problem that in our country, Norway, we are so this money from this oil and gas is so important? We see it now in this COVID-19 situation. No problem. We have enough money. Is that a problem here?
To some degree, yes. It might. I mean, it doesn't necessarily nurture change, right?
Yeah.
Because, So or nurture change. It makes it. We're so dependent on energy. So.
What do you think, Sandra?
Well, we're dependent on the money, and that might show us that we can't just shut down. Of course, we have to have a smart strategy. Because I understand, of course, people, if you only think in an environmental context, that, we have to shut it down. But no, we can't just do that because we're dependent of the industry. And we don't actually have anything that can replace it today. So we have to be smart and think fast and to develop those possibilities first.
This is an IOR conference, Improved Oil Recovery. All the researchers at this institute, they say the solution is IOR. What do you say?
Get those opinions out there. Talk to the companies.
Yeah.
Let people know about your good ideas or what you've been researching on.
So you say that the IOR researchers, they are shy people?
Might be.
Might be. Why is IOR the solution?
I think we need any solutions we get, right? When you ask how do we reach those 2030 and 2050 goals, we don't have an answer. I don't think anyone has a clear answer to we do this. So we need all the smart people and good solutions that we can get. And
you are two of the smart people in the big picture. 20 young people together. How long will you be young in the big picture?
At least this year.
Okay. Yeah. So it's for 1 year you are connected to this
usually,
big
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next year there will be other young people. When you are 32, you are not young.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's the way it is.
And finally, will you work in this oil and gas industry for the rest of your life?
That's a difficult question. I try not to think too far ahead. I want to work here still now, as long as I think it's exciting. On one hand, it should be exciting for me personally, and I can learn new stuff and develop. But no, I'm not sure if this will be my forever industry.
Sandra?
Well, I don't know either, but for now, it's a very exciting sector to work in. I look forward every day to my job, and I think that says a lot. And we actually have the possibility to be part of the change and work together with the company we're in with regards to that. So then it's more exciting to work.
So in 20, 30 years, or in 2050, I think there will be a statue of Karoline and Sandra in the middle downtown in Stavanger, because they changed the world.
Take away Alexander Kielland.
Yeah, take away, yeah, of course. Now I should have given you a gift. That's how we do it when we have conferences, to guests and speakers. But well, there is a gift, but it's not just for you. Because I think that the IOR Center have done a very good decision. They have donated money to UNICEF. That's the United Nations Children Fund. So you will have this one. That's the only thing you will have. But inside this gift card, you can read about some school in a boxes. And school in a boxes is something that, you have a school in a box. A teacher in a village or a city can have in this box equipments that could be for a leisure, even if the school is destroyed or if it's not a school. So you will have this one and know that IOR Center have spent money to this school in a box. And I have a dream. Yeah, we have a dream. When these kids in other countries, in war-destroyed countries, have learned something, they find out we need to go to Norway to educate more, to the IOR Center, and become the next generation of the big picture. Is that sounds great?
Excellent. Yes.
So this of you, and thank you very much, Sandra Cederholm and Karoline Lillehammer, the young ones in this oil and gas industry. And now, well, we need music. Soon you will listen to the mezzo-soprano Marie Elise Herrestvela, and she will sing, and Maria, it's difficult, Maria Buekessel, she will play the piano. And I think they have chosen the right music. It's connected to this conference. Because a famous writer and a poet, Arne Garborg, yes, I know it's not William Shakespeare, but it's close up to. He's from Jæren, just south of Stavanger. In 1895, he wrote some poets. It was a collection of poems called Haugtussa. And the most famous composer from Norway ever, Edvard Grieg, he was so amused about these poems, so he composed music to Haugtussa in 1895. And 125 years later, the Edvard Grieg field was the first field in the world who got awarded a carbon clear certification. You see the connection here, Edvard Grieg. And Edvard Grieg field in the Norwegian Continental Shelf is operated by Lundin Norway, one of the partners of the IOR Center. So Edvard Grieg music, of course we should listen to Edvard Grieg today. We will listen to Blåbærli and Møte. And to translate, we are searching for blueberries and will have a meeting. Enjoy.
Corte per ona ha, un slik en røsjelig våe. Jeg sa bare vær så god, nå må du ikke være blyg. Jeg vet deg så vel i ro, ta for deg etter din hud. Men var det den reven rau, så skulle han få smaka staven. Jeg skulle banka han dau, så han var bror til paven. Slekt skarve har med litt sleng, han stel både kje og lam. Men enda så fin han gjeng, hev korkje akel skam. Men var det den stygge skrubb, så argos og hol som futen, jeg tok meg en bjørkekubb og ga han en god på snuten. Han reiv sunt sauer og lam, for mor mi så trått og titt. Ja, sant han bare kom, skulle han så visst fått sitt. Men var det den snille Gud, der burte fra Skarebråte? Han fikk vel ein på sin trut, men helst på en annan måte. Og du, hva tenker jeg på? Det lid nok på dag i natt. Jeg må til bøskapen sjå, og dokka drømmer satt. Sitt ein sundag lengtande i liv, alt meir og meir i lengta i saman søker, og hjarta fullt og tungt i varmen bankar, og drømmen vaknar, bivrande og blid. Da gjeng det som ei hildring over nøten, og raudnar heit, der kjem den vene gutten. Burt vil ho gjøyma seg i ørska brå, men stoggar trullt og augum mot han vender. Dei tek ein annan i dei varme hender, og stønn så der og bryt du ut i dette undringsord med en snedeg da at du så stor. Og som de led til svalkveldings stund, alt meir og meir i lengta I saman søkjer, og brått halsten og I arm seg krøkjer, og øre skjelv deg saman, munn mot munn. Alt svimrar burt, og der I kvelden varm, I heite sær, og han sang.
Hello, my name is Mehul Vora. I am from India and currently I am working as a PhD candidate at the National IOR Center of Norway. The topic of my research is environmental risk assessment of IOR solutions. So we are working towards assessing environmental impacts from different products and processes that are developed at the IOR Center. The outcome of our project will be helpful in understanding environmental impacts from different IOR solutions, and subsequently it will be useful in shortlisting the solutions that are more environmentally friendly than others. Please get in touch if you would like to know the details of our project. Thank you.
And in 1.5 minutes, the next session will start. So you get some water and 10 push-ups, and we'll be back at 2 o'clock. Welcome back, my friends. There are short breaks here today, but still it's 4 hours, not 8 hours as it is on other conferences. This digital conference from the IOR Center in Norway. I have to be honest with you. When I'm leading this conference, I'm a bit nervous to say something foolish and to pronounce difficult professional expressions wrong. I mean, in my daily life, I work with culture, tomato festival, guided bus tours, historical theater and communication. Yeah, all of those kind of things that you don't need. But here at the IOR Center and at this conference, I meet people with serious jobs that have something to do with the society, who have necessary important jobs, like the three next speakers, who will talk about carbon capture, utilization and storage, about hydrogen, blue hydrogen, and this ammonia, big ammonia project. In a big picture, those kind of things are more important than a tomato festival and guided bus tours for seniors. Luckily, I can learn from them. And if I have a question or two, I can go into the chat function at this website and write down some questions. And they are more than willingly to answer. And remember, when you write your question, the next three speakers, they will have their speech, and after all the three speakers, then we will have a Q&A session. So please write first the name, whom are you asking, and then your question, because we need to know your question, who are going to answer that question. You understand that? Of course you do. And first of all, let's go to Sveinung Hagen, directly from Bergen, who is leading advisor CO2 storage at Equinor. And the keyword is of course CO2. And Equinor, they say that they has the solution to capture and store. But when is it possible to go to action, and who are willing to buy?
Thank you, Jan. Very good. Thank you for inviting me to speak at the conference. That's right. I'm sitting in Bergen, and hopefully you can see my slides and you can hear me. So unless I don't get any other messages, I will start. So my speech is about low carbon solutions in Equinor, and it will be emphasized on CCS. That's what I work on, and that's where I have my background from. So a short outline of the speech is as this. I like to give a little bit of context to the low carbon solutions, and including CCS, the portfolio we have in Equinor today. Some of the world perspectives within CCS, is this something very new, or has this been around for a while? I will touch upon that a little bit. Also, that we have some experience in Equinor on this already, and some of the business rationale, as you were alluding to, John. And then towards the end, also there are some barriers towards this, but I will go through them when due time. So to combat the climate change, the world need an energy transformation, and Equinor is prepared to be part of that. And late last year, our CEO Anders Opedal announced Equinor's net zero ambition by 2050, and those ambitions are not only including the CO2 emissions we have through our production, it's also taking into account the CO2 that our product is producing. So scope 1, 2, and 3, if you like. But to meet those quite ambitious ambition, we need carbon solutions, low carbon solutions, and CCS as being a prerequisite. And not only on the power and our product is CCS necessary. We see CCS also needed in industry sectors like cement and iron and even waste, where these industries sectors only can be decarbonized by using CCS. So a little bit around what does it entail. The IEA have developed some scenarios on CCS globally and in Europe. Roughly speaking, the energy from the world emissions today is about 30-35 gigaton, and by 2050, a lot of measures have to be taken into account. Obviously, energy efficiency, etc., and renewable, obviously. But the energy forecast that internationally in the world, 5 to 6, maybe 7 gigatons of CO2 needs to be stored annually. And then this is broken down to what does it entail in Europe. And by 2050, we believe that around 350 million tons of CO2 needs to be stored annually. And this, to compare that with today's situation, where we store about 40 million tons per year, it's quite, and that is internationally, it's quite a substantial challenge we have taken on us. When promoting Equinor's low carbon solution, it is necessary to underline that this is not to compete with the renewable, it is to complement the renewable. And to illustrate this strategy, we have taken sort of the main energy sectors and ranked them according to from what is easy in a way to decarbonize and what is more hard. And the strategy then is to give renewable an exclusive right on the easier side in a way of the chart, and then hydrogen taking more responsibility on the harder side. And just for an example, I won't go into detail here, but for fuel, for example, the batteries in the cars does make a lot of sense. But if you were to think of cruise ships or marine ships, all ships, then it is quite it's not so feasible with batteries, and hydrogen, in particular liquid hydrogen, could be a good solution. So in a way, we can sum up saying that low carbon solutions allow us to decarbonize the entire energy economy from both sides, which would be then a lot more rapid and more efficient than only taking it from the renewable side. So some of the Equinor's low carbon portfolio, we like to develop this in the nations that have already advanced low carbon policies, regulations and funding possibilities. I will not go into detail on the projects we have. These are some of the projects we have in Europe, but they involve maritime fuel, decarbonizing power and industry, mainly through the blue hydrogen portfolio. Because we see blue hydrogen as a natural, and blue hydrogen is, just to underline, is the hydrogen you get when you reform natural gas, in contrast to green hydrogen, which you get if you're using electrolysis, and preferentially you have renewable electricity, and then you produce green hydrogen. But the blue hydrogen is a natural hub, we believe, for the energy transition, and it will open door to integrate green hydrogen in the future, when there is an intermittent renewable electricity made available. As of today, we use the renewable electricity on a range of sectors, but maybe in the future there will be an abundance of renewable electricity, and then you can start to think of green hydrogen as well, which, by the way, is sort of the most thought idea in EU, that is green hydrogen. But we believe also that there is a need for blue hydrogen in a transition into the green. And to be able to produce blue hydrogen with a low carbon footprint, you need to store the CO2. And we have I put up 3 of the projects we are involved in here. Number 1, of course, Northern Light. I will come back to that a little bit in a few seconds. And then Northern Endurance Partnership in UK, and also in the North Sea Basin, we are developing mapping and maturing potentials in the portfolio we already have, either as saline formations or in depleted reservoirs. So it is important to underline that there is a really need for large CO2 storage capabilities in the future, and that is what we are working hard on. When it comes to the international, some of the international perspectives, this is a figure I borrowed from the Global CCS Institute, and it discusses a little bit, what nations are most ready to implement CCS, and the darker the color, the more ready the nation are in terms of regulations, funding, etc. And as you can see, Norway, UK, North America are quite advanced in terms of being ready to implement CCS. And these are the ongoing projects already, and as I said, about 40 million tons per annum is stored through these projects. As you can also see, there are a lot of projects in North America. Many of them, not all, but many of those projects are involved with EOR, where you enhance oil recovery using CO2. But in addition to the EOR component, they have implemented monitoring and post-injection stewardship, so they are also regarded as CCS projects. And then I just put on extra projects that are in the pipeline, and we know that there are projects that by 2025 we will be storing more than 100 million tons per annum globally. So Equinor have been involved with CCS since 1996, when Sleipner decided to store the CO2 instead of just emitting the CO2. We needed to take out the CO2 in order to sell the gas to the European market, and industry standard was only to emit the CO2. But some good decisions was made back then, and we have stored CO2 since 1996, so 25 years of experience this year. Sleipner has been sort of a mother, the mother project for CCS, and it has been a really important demonstration concept for CCS. We also have implemented CCS on Snøhvit, where there are a offshore pipe transport included, and we also have made corrective measures on Snøhvit when we got some pressure increase in the reservoir that needed to be remediated. And also we have been involved in Sala, which is in the closure phase. So all in all, we are involved in a varied and diverse CCS within CCS experience. A little bit of details, and this goes a little bit to the EOR center and a little bit of reservoir, if you like. Just put in this slide. CCS it is important that we know we have containment, and there are many trapping mechanisms for CCS. One is obviously the one we also know from gas and oil discoveries, that you have a structural trap somehow. But in addition, we see trapping through residual trapping, and that is through CO2 moving in the reservoir and being trapped in micropores and capillary effects. And then you have trapping through solubility. It dissolves in the brine, and lastly it is mineralization. The two latter is really slow, so we really have to rely on the two first, and in particular the first years it is the structural trapping that is most important. So what does we believe when it comes to CCS? What are the main dimensions we're working along? Well, we really see that in three routes. It is either that we implement CCS on our own to reduce our own emissions, or it could be to decarbonize our oil and gas products, the scope 3, or I already mentioned the hydrogen strategy we have in Equinor, and then lately, or the last, is to develop a new business and store CO2 for industries, and it could also be implementing negative emissions in the future. Not only reduction, but we need to take CO2 out of the atmosphere and remove in the future, and that is one important aspect and most forward-looking scenarios regarding being able to meet the Paris Agreement foresee that we also need to remove CO2 in the future. I mentioned Northern Light slightly earlier, so we know that is underway. Northern Light is a transport and storage part of Longship, the Norway government's CCS full-scale project, and that is about 1.5 million tons in scope 1 and then 5 million tons in scope 2. What I like to underline with this figure is really that there has, that one project has spurred a lot of interest towards CCS, and the Northern Light project. The business developers are in contact quite often with new emitters in Europe that are interested to come to Northern Light and store their CO2. And then a little bit on the barriers. I will close now because I think I might use my time, but there are some technical barriers. We don't see they are not manageable, but it is a lot about having focus on cost and risk, reducing cost and risk. When it comes to regulatory framework, there are good discussions with the Norwegian Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, but around in the world there are also some regions that are lacking good regulatory framework. So that is sort of a challenge we have. On finance, obviously, there are some costs related to CCS, but we believe that in the future, cost of emitting the CO2, which is rather cheap today, will cost a lot more at the same time as we reduce the storage cost. So when the storing is cheaper than emitting, then the business case is up and running. And then also some of the political issues are still under considerations. So my last slide is really to show you sort of an impression of how the hub in the north of Bergen will look like in just a few years. So this is the hub of Northern Lights, and you can see the ship coming into the port, and the CO2 will then be piped to the reservoir just south of Troll. So this was I think what I like to present.
Thank you, Sveinung, Hagen. And if you, in the next speeches, think, I forgot to ask him a question, just write question to Sveinung, even if there are other people who are having their talks. Thank you, Sveinung Hagen. And now we're going to a man he's Chief Technology Officer. Sounds like he works in the Navy or the Army. And Stian Olsen, he has an important mission in Aker Carbon Capture. He will talk about the benefits of hydrogen production. And during his speech, he will talk about quite huge numbers with millions and billions, according to tons of emissions and money. But the solution is simple, with a huge capture rate. So get ready for 7 brilliant minutes.
Hi, my name is Stian Olsen and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Aker Carbon Capture. Today I'm going to share some perspectives on carbon capture utilization and storage and hydrogen. Before I get into the presentation itself, I want to talk a little bit about Aker Carbon Capture and what we're all about. Aker Carbon Capture is a pure-play carbon capture company which delivers ready-to-use capture plants for the industry. We have a best-in-class HSE-friendly technology that enables us to capture CO2 without harm to local environment or people associated with the plants. In addition, our technology is verified and proven with more than 50,000 operating hours so far. So let's set the stage. There is a lot of talk these days about an emerging hydrogen economy and how that is going to help decarbonize the world and Europe in particular. And many countries are developing hydrogen strategies for how we're going to develop this over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But there is already a huge industry associated with hydrogen production today, and this industry is responsible for emissions in the vicinity of 830 million tons of CO2 every year. We are a carbon capture technology company that has post-combustion capture, and this means that the existing hydrogen industry reflects a huge potential for us. In their strategy, the EU is focusing a lot on green hydrogen, that is hydrogen produced from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power. But they're also pointing at blue hydrogen, hydrogen production from natural gas with carbon capture, as a growing market as well. And they estimate that close to 11 billion euros is needed to retrofit existing plants in Europe until 2030. And this is sort of the starting place for Aker Carbon Capture and why we go into hydrogen as an important aspect of our strategy. If you look at the European hydrogen market today, there is a sort of concentration of production sites in Northern Europe, particularly around Netherlands and Germany. And the hydrogen production is primarily in three domains. It's ammonia and methanol, standalone merchant plants, refineries and petrochemical plants. And 65% of the production is associated to 5 countries with 5,000 tons of hydrogen produced every day. We see that there is a huge potential for us, but it's difficult for us to do this alone. So we need to partner up with strategic partners to help deploy carbon capture on a larger scale. Therefore, we have joined forces with Haldor Topsoe, which is one of the world-leading companies when it comes to steam methane reforming technologies and making natural gas into hydrogen. And we've signed a memorandum of understanding with them last year, and we're going to develop low-carbon solutions for the hydrogen market together. We do this because our technologies are complementary, and we believe that we can lead the transition towards significant reduction in carbon emissions in the future. Our technology is ideal for carbon capture of hydrogen production. Here you see a simplified flow diagram of how CO2 can be captured from hydrogen production. You have natural gas coming into a steam reforming process, and as we go through the process, we can reroute some of the CO2 from the production process into the steam reforming again, and that way we can capture more than 90% of the CO2 from the process. So this looks good on paper, but what we have done is that we've been part of a demonstration project in Sweden called Preem CCS. The objective of the project is to demonstrate that you can capture CO2 from a hydrogen production unit and also look into the value chain of the CO2 handling after the CO2 has been captured. What we did in that project was that we verified our amine-based carbon capture process. We did that on a hydrogen production facility at Preemraff in Lysekil in Sweden. We had a 9-month test campaign where we had our mobile testing unit located on site and operating for more than 300,000 hours under real industrial conditions. We achieved there a capture rate more than 90%, close to 95% CO2 capture. We also saw that our solvent is reacting very well with the flue gas from the hydrogen production. We had very little degradation of the solvent, and we had low emissions of particulates to air as well. So based on this, we can say that our technology is ready and well suited for CO2 capture from hydrogen production flue gas. So this conference is related to increased oil recovery, and a question that we've gotten is, how can carbon capture and associated with hydrogen play a role in this segment? We believe that in order to unlock the carbon capture potential or the carbon capture market, we really need to enable, or we need to start or establish large CO2 storage projects in order to unlock this potential. Already today, there are many projects in Europe underway that are planned to enable CO2 storage. But one of the challenges that you have associated with storage today is that it is expensive and the investments needed are significant. So an interesting question to the audience of this conference is how can increased oil recovery or enhanced oil recovery accelerate the development of CO2 storage projects? Is it possible to find financial models or business models that could reduce the investment cost of storage opportunities and in this way increase the number of storage sites available in the future? So this is the question I'm going to leave you with today. We work across the whole value chain with partners to realize the CO2 value chain. And if you're interested, please reach out and I would be happy to have a discussion around this topic. And with that, I say thank you for having me at this conference and I'm looking forward to participating in the rest of the conference. Thank you.
And we say thank you, Stian Olsen. And now we will turn to a rather new company. It's just 1.5 years old. Horisont Energi or Horisont Energi, and their solution is to build a big ammonia factory in Finnmark, in the northern part of Norway. And we have just learned about hydrogen, and it's more or less that we take another step forward. We will still talk about carbon capture technology, and now we will give the word to Ronald Maritvold in Horisont Energi, and he will talk about converting hydrogen to ammonia. Well, just give us 4 years, he says. We will give him 15 minutes to convince us. Here you are.
Good afternoon. So I'm here to present something we call the Barents Blue project. In short, the project is building a large-scale ammonia production plant that will use natural gas feedstock produced in the Barents Sea region, and then to store the associated CO2 in a reservoir outside the coast of Finnmark. First, a couple of words about our company. As was said, it's a new company. It was founded in August 2019 by Bjørgulf Hauklisæter Eidesen, based on innovative ideas for a new carbon-neutral energy company. And we've been growing very fast. We are in the range of 20 employees and some consultants. And most of us have a long experience from the oil and gas industry. And as you can see on this slide, we have very high ambitions. Our priority is to develop clean and profitable large-scale, world-scale, actually, ammonia plants together with partners and investors. And it's also to commercialize carbon storage through innovation and partnerships. Our first project is the Barents Blue project, where studies are well progressed for a planned investment decision next year. And we are maturing this project together with Equinor. Here we want to produce blue ammonia in an energy-efficient manner and with low carbon footprint, compliant with the new EU green taxonomy. So why ammonia? Well, ammonia is an efficient energy carrier with 30 to 40% higher energy density than hydrogen on an equivalent volume basis. And it can be transported on the existing ammonia fleet and using the existing infrastructure. Also, due to temperature issues, there's lower energy consumption and losses during transit. Today, about 85% of the ammonia is used for the fertilizer production. and it's commonly created from natural gas without CCS. We believe that the established ammonia market will grow significantly and will need decarbonization. And there's also a significant emerging market for use of ammonia as maritime fuels and for power generation. And obviously, it can be transferred back to hydrogen at the arrival site if desired so. So our project, Barents Blue, the first phase of this of the plant projected will have a daily feed of 2.8 million cubic meter of gas, typically for a period of 25 years. All hydrocarbon components up to and including C6 will be reformed to 190,000 tons of blue hydrogen per year, and then subsequently to about 1 million ton of ammonia, blue ammonia per year, using the autothermal Syncore reformer process from Haldor Topsøe. The intent we have is to have a zero-emission plant with focus on overall low energy and water consumption, a short hookup period, and a high operational regularity. Worldwide, there are 7 plants in operation that uses this reforming technology, and aggregated, they have about 70 years of runtime. The lifetime can be extended, and it can also be expanded with subsequent trains, which we are preparing for. We aim to capture at least 99% of the CO2 from the process and the power generation, summing to 1.8 to 2 million ton of CO2 per year that has to be stored. The captured CO2 is intermediately stored in liquid state in a pressurized pipe storage system. A similar storage concept has been developed for boats by the Knutsen Group and is planned utilized for the transportation and injection. The CO2 will arrive offshore in a liquid state at about 55 bars pressure and 5 to 10 degrees centigrade temperature. And it will be injected then through a bio-based injection system. This development concept is new, although it consists of components that are very well known to the oil and gas industry. A DCFO cable for power and control is connected to an onshore control room, and hydraulic power and MEG units are placed on the subsea template. The concept is scalable and energy efficient, and being independent of a pipeline from shore, it gives obviously more flexibility in locating the injection site. It has lower costs, and it would also allow reuse of many of the components later. And since this is an IOR conference, I have one subsurface slide. We are in the process of applying for our first CO2 storage license. The work name we have given this project is Polaris. We've done the first feasibility studies on the potential candidate, including an initial assessment of the geomechanical constraints and the storage integrity. We aim to locate the injection wells such that capillary trapping and CO2 dissolution in the brine is maximized. And with a long time span being considered here, issues related to gravity and convection mixing, pressure evolution post-injection, and the geometry of the trap itself play a role. Pending field-specific core experiments, behavior analogy to gas is common for selection of relative permeability parameters. The choice and modeling of relative permeability endpoints and hysteresis behavior is very important to us for the distribution of the CO2 or the prediction of the distribution of the CO2. The CO2 is stored at supercritical state in the reservoir at reservoir conditions. However, compared to the small cross-section seen on the slide, which is obviously gravity dominated with the water in pink and the CO2 around the injection well in yellow, in reality, we will inject the CO2 in a liquid state due to the low temperature. And in the near well region, the viscosity and the viscous forces and the gravity differences will be, the viscous forces will be larger and the gravity differences smaller than what is illustrated here. There's also adverse mobility ratio between the water and the CO2. We have intermittent high injection rates, and we have an induced salt precipitation that has to be designed for and taken into account when modeling the injectivity efficiency. Finally, we are investigating how monitoring of the CO2 plume and the well can be done reliably and, very important, cost efficient. I will leave you with our mission statement. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Ronald Maritvold from Hydrogen, not hydrogen, but Horisont Energi. It's not that easy. Sveinung, Hagen, you are there in Bergen. I hope we have a question for you from our director, Ying. If Equinor is to reach the CO2 emission reduction goal, how many million tons of CO2 will Equinor reduce per year by 2030 and the important year 2050?
Thank you, Ying, for the question. Obviously, the emissions Equinor have through our Scope 1 today is about 14 million tons per year, and the products are about 250-300. I think that is sort of reported in the sustainability reports. And then this is going to be zero by 2050, but an interim 2030 goal needs obviously to be reached as well. And there are, discussions around what is going to happen on the Scope 1, because there are some other measures as well that are and is discussed, as you may be aware of, like electrification and other means. So I won't sort of say a specific number, but at least we if we are able to get the company and the external arena with us, there will be substantial volumes, we believe, in also 2030. But there will be CCS, it will be energy efficiency, there will be electrification and other means to reduce the Scope 1 and Scope 6 for 2050.
Could I follow up there, Sveinung? Since I asked Sandra and Karoline earlier about this goal for zero emissions in 2050, is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah?
Simple question, now a simple answer. It is possible, but it is also very challenging, I would say. But I think it's you should be looking forward maybe to some of the future announcements that are coming from Equinor on that matter. I believe there will be something coming in the future on those questions.
Well, can't you tell us now?
No, I would, of course, but then what would happen?
Okay.
I was just kidding.
Well, just be there, Sveinung. Thank you so far. Ronald, a question from Bjørn Ove Heimsund. Have you studied CO2 injection into any of the oil reservoirs in the Barents for IOR purposes?
We have not, no.
No. Could it be that?
Yes, however, we are out of the oil and gas production business, so that's not our mission. But we are, we of course, on the storage part we could do it, but not for the recovery purpose.
Okay. Another question for you, Ronald, from Ying. What is the efficiency of reforming natural gas to ammonia as compared to using the gas directly?
I don't have that number in my head. I'm sorry, but that's something that we can find, but I don't have it.
In your speech,
but the main purpose, of course, is to avoid the CO2 emissions.
Yeah. And in your speech, you said we have high ambitions.
Yes.
And you said you were 20 employees in your company?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah. So what is the way to increase here?
Well, first of all, is to actually start executing projects. We have several projects in the pipeline that we are thinking of. So we will grow organically as we are able to develop projects. Yes.
And many of you that work in this company have your background from the oil and gas industry.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so you know what to do.
Yes, but we have to do it very much more cost efficiently, not being in the oil and gas business.
Okay. I wonder, Jan Stian, you are together with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, because in your speech, you said, I will leave this question for you. But can't you answer the question about what you left us?
I think it is a challenging question. I think there is a lot of history, for example, in the US, where they have a lot of experience using CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, and together with the Q45 scheme, they've been able to create business cases that make sense for the actors. It's slightly more simple over there because it's a land-based solution, making the logistics related to EOR more simple than what we would see typically here in Norway. So I guess the experience is there. The question is how can we reach a cost-efficient level in terms of exploiting that opportunity, and I certainly don't have the answers to that, and I believe that the audience or the people who work with as operators on the field need to evaluate and explore those business opportunities.
Okay, Jan Stian, another question for you here. When will the first real industrial CO2 capture project be launched, and where?
Well, we're actually launching it in Norway today through Brevik CCS, where we're building a capture plant to capture CO2 from a cement factory. And that is the first one in Norway, and it's the first one in the cement industry. But there has been other large projects for CO2 capture in, for example, the US before.
And if I ask you the same question I asked Sveinung about 2050, zero emissions, what do you say?
I believe it is possible. It's going to take a tremendous effort to reach that goal, and I don't believe it's enough just to focus on CO2 capture from fossil sources. I think we need to explore different avenues where we start to talk about not only abatement, but also about removal of CO2, looking into negative emissions, for example, as one of the tools to reach that goal. And that, of course, open up a completely different scenario to work in as well.
Okay. And Jan Stian, when you listen to Ronald and you listen to Sveinung, who's got the best solutions?
I'm not going to rank the different solutions. I think we are facing a tremendous challenge when it comes to mitigating climate change, and we need all the solutions we can get. And I think there is room for multiple solutions for low carbon energy in the future.
Yeah.
I don't think we should necessarily put one up against the other.
Sveinung, if I ask the question, who's got the best solutions?
But between me and Ronald?
Yeah, of course. You have three, yeah, at least 3 solutions. Yeah.
No, I think it is an tremendous challenge. So there are, you know, we need measures as been presented in the 3 presentations today, and more. It's a lot of what should I say, different angles to, you know, how to combat climate change, and I think you know, the net zero, is it what we say in 2050, and in order to really reach that, and we all like or want to reach the Paris Agreement with 2 or even now it's 1.5 degrees Celsius. There is also a need for negative emissions in the future. So Jim Stian was alluding to that. You know, BECCS and or bio CCS and direct air capture.
But Sveinung Hagen, I have attended this conference, the IOR conference, 3 times before, and in every time they talk a bit of sustainability and environment, but to this time it's almost just about environment. Is it panic time?
I don't know if it's panic time, but it has really been there has been a change. I've been working on CO2 storage and CCS since 2007, and there was a lot of interest in EU around 12 years ago, and then we have had a long period where have been ups and downs in economy. There has been sort of not enough, I would say, attention from the industry and policymakers. But I think what we now see is that, for example, EU, and for example, you know, the interest and what, you know, all countries was in 2016 signed the Paris Agreement, was really the one thing that initiated and ignited sort of a lot more focus in this, and you see all oil and gas companies are, at least more or less all oil and gas companies are you know, following the same route as Equinor, and then Total and Shell and all the super majors are following the same idea of transforming their business towards more low carbon. And but it's also important to say that it's not only low carbon. We need oil and gas for many more decades, and we're building maybe a sort of a new industry on the shoulders of the oil and gas on the Norwegian continental shelf.
But then I want to ask all 3 of you the same question. Sveinung first, then Jan Stian and Ronald. Do you feel the pressure
from
the society, or from your bosses? Find out something really necessary. We have a goal in 2050.
I think there is no doubt that there is a increased society pressure that also takes sort of, we need to take into account in the industry. So and this goes for one, like the investors. There is a pressure towards investing in green, and the EU taxonomy are focusing on low carbon and renewable. So there is a, if not really a pressure, it is a lot of attention, at least I would say, towards transforming.
Okay, in Aker Carbon Capture, is it pressure or attention, Stian?
I think there is a pressure to accelerate the energy transition. We are running out of time, and I mean, we have launched a company to answer that call. We are running our business based on actually supporting and accelerating the decarbonization of the world and the society to reach those goals. So yes, I believe there is a pressure, and there should be a pressure on everyone to take the necessary actions to face this challenge.
And Ronald Maritvold, do you feel the pressure, or is it you that press?
Well, our company is not an oil and gas producing company, so we are feeling the pressure, but we are hopefully also bringing some solutions that we can share, because we think it's an urgency to do this. I agree with everything that's said about negative emissions and carbon removal. So yeah, that's our business plan.
Yeah. I have to say thank you to Ronald Maritvold from Horisont Energi, the new company, 1.5 year old, and Stian Olsen, Aker Carbon Capture, and Sveinung Hagen in Equinor. Thanks a lot, both for your speeches and for your answers. And well, let's hope in 2050 we could meet together and say what did happen.
Excellent.
My name is Bjarte Hetland. I'm a PhD student at the University of Stavanger, and my field of research is non-Newtonian fluid flow in porous media. Newtonian physics explains very well how reality works at the human scale, but fails dramatically at the atomic scale. In a similar way, Darcy's law works very well for Newtonian fluids at core scale, but fails dramatically for non-Newtonian fluids at pore scale. Some of the important physics of polymer fluids is hard to implement and has generally been ignored by simulation tools. These effects seem to play an important role in draining otherwise inaccessible pores during polymer flooding. How big are these effects? And is it really safe to ignore them? To answer these, among other questions, we need better tools. And this is what my research is about. To develop a pore scale simulation tool for non-Newtonian fluids based on realistic physical models to produce better predictions in order to increase recovery and reduce costs.
And when we are back together here at this digital IOR conference at 3:30 or 30 to 4, as we say in Norway, in a way, then we will have one lesson with water, polymers, CO2, etc. And well, in Stavanger, I can see the sun. I have to go outside. You should do it yourself, and we will be back 3:30. This is the IOR conference from
Ladies
Stavanger.
and gentlemen.
And here we are at this digital conference this year. Let's hope we are back together and see each other next year. Well, first today we were talking about the big picture, looking ahead to 2050. And then we listened to someone who says that the solutions are in the carbon capture and storage. And now it's time for the research. Energy efficient recovery. Talking about smart water and polymer. And now we have to walk into the lab. And 5 years ago, I was asked for the first time to be the host of this IOR conference in Stavanger. And I had to admit, I did not know anything about IOR, EOR, polymers, pore scale, core scale, foam. And they talked so much about this gift from God, smart water. And I was wondering, what is smart water? Is it something to drink, something to extinguish fire? And today, I tell my friends and my family, oh, you don't know what smart water is? Well, it's easy. You have some intelligent water that you inject into the reservoir and squeeze more oil out. Simple as that. Well, when Tina Puntervold now will have the headline, is there a smart water EOR potential at the Norwegian continental shelf? Well, the answer should be yes, of course. Or is it that simple? Tina Puntervold, she is the assistant director at the National IOR Center in Stavanger in Norway, and she's also the leader of Theme 1, Mobile and Immobile Oil and EOR Methods. And she's waiting now to have her presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Torgeir. So today I asked the question, is there a smart water EOR potential on the Norwegian continental shelf? And earlier today, we saw that Torgeir Stordal from the MPD said that there is still room for improved oil recovery. So on the figure to the left, you see the light green bars are signifying the amount of oil left in the ground after the fields are being abandoned. So definitely there's more oil to be recovered in the future. And also it has been found that there's a huge technical potential to actually produce some of that oil. And with a dollar per barrel of $40 per barrel, then the technical EOR potential is about the 1,500 billion NOK. If we use $60 per barrel, then the potential is about a little bit more than 2 billion NOK. So there's a lot of money still left in the ground, and we need to try to produce that as good as possible. In a study by Imperial College and NPD, they found that the most promising IOR methods to be used on the NCS are the following. In this pie diagram, we can see that the hydrocarbon miscible WAG is a promising method. Smart water in combination with polymer is also a promising method. And I want you to pay attention to the dark blue at the bottom, which is the low salinity alone. It's also quite with a good potential. And this is the focus of this talk today. So it's on smart water and low salinity water injection. In 2020, NPD together with Imperial College also published a new study where they evaluated 46 fields on the Norwegian continental shelf. And they found the technical screening potential was quite high, as you can see on the left. And that was only looking at the technical potential. But when they included operational, environmental, and economic considerations and the likelihood of this method to be employed, we can see that, of course, the extra oil that could be produced will decrease. But if we pay attention again to the dark blue and maybe also the light blue, pies, we can see that these pieces of pie will increase. So there's a potential to use low salinity water injection also in combination with polymer on the Norwegian continental shelf. And as we saw in the previous presentation by Bilal Rashid from BP, BP are doing it. So Clair Ridge is the first offshore deployment of BP's enhanced oil recovery technology, the low sal. And they expect to produce up to 40 million additional barrels of oil due to the low salinity water injection from day one. And so if the UK can do it, why can't we do it? That is my question. And first, what is smart water, or what is low salinity water? So sometimes you see them used intermittently. Smart water is an injection brine with a modified ionic composition. The composition itself is depending on the mineralogy of the reservoir, while low salinity water is a brine with low content of salt. But both these methods, they are aiming at improving the wettability and improving the sweep efficiency of in the reservoir during water injection. And no expensive chemicals are added, so it's rather environmentally friendly. And how does it work? So the basic principle is that it improves the sweep efficiency when injected. It works both in sandstone and carbonates, but in sandstone it is a low salinity brine that is a smart water. You can see on the figure on the right that if you inject formation water or not the smart water, this brine will just produce the oil in the larger pores. But if you inject smart water or low salinity water in sandstones, then that water is able to change wettability in strategic points, increasing the capillary forces and causing spontaneous imbibition of water into the smaller pores. Thus, we improve the sweep efficiency. Again, the wettability alteration mechanism for the smart water is different due to the different chemistry of the reservoir. To observe any EOR or enhanced oil recovery by smart water injection, we need a reservoir that is not already completely water wet. Otherwise, there is no smart water EOR potential. So definitely it's important to understand the initial wettability of the reservoir. And the initial reservoir wettability is dictated by the reservoir chemistry, and especially the chemical interactions between the crude oil, the brine, and the rock. And the crude oil contains polar organic acids and bases that are important for the wetting. The brine contains salinity, could vary significantly, and also it has a composition, which is important for the wettability. The rock itself could consist of carbonate minerals or sandstone minerals, and these minerals have different surface reactivities. And all chemical reactivities are temperature dependent. So temperature is also an important factor. The rock chemistry, normally reservoirs are divided in carbonates and sandstones. Carbonates can consist of chalk, limestone, dolomite, or a mixture of these. Sandstones are not just sandstones. They contain different amounts of quartz, different amounts of clays, and different types of clays. Could be kaolinite, illite, chlorite are typical clays. Feldspars are also present in many cases, and that could be in different amounts and different kinds. So we have both sodium feldspar, calcium feldspar, and potassium feldspar. And there could be other minerals present also that could affect the initial wettability, like the carbonate cement or anhydrite evaporites. The brine chemistry, for observing any enhanced oil recovery, we need an injection water that is different from the formation water, because we need to disturb the chemical equilibrium present between the rock, brine, and oil in the reservoir. And we must be able to unstick the oil from the surface. And how can we do that? Well, one option is to inject smart water. And the crude oil itself is not a homogeneous phase. It contains thousands of various components, including polar organic acids and bases that have affinity to the rock surface, and thus can influence the wetting. These components act as crude oil anchor molecules to the surface. And oil components, as you see at the bottom here, bases and acids, they are depending, their charges are depending on the pH. So they could be positively charged at low pH or neutrally charged, and they can switch to a neutrally charged and negatively charged components at higher pHs. So pH is also important in the wettability of the reservoir. We need to understand the initial wettability of this complex system. And we saw different mineralogies, crude oil composition and brine compositions are all important factors in the initial wettability generation. We also need to understand the wettability alteration mechanisms for be able to creating better reservoir simulation models. I'm not going to go into details here, as Bilal also showed that there are several suggested mechanisms for the extra oil recovered by low salinity or smart water injection. But this is something that we need to know to be able to create better, more reliable models. So back to my question, is there a smart water EOR potential on the Norwegian continental shelf? Here's some results from a reservoir A at Norwegian continental shelf at high temperature. We have performed a core flooding test using 4 different brines. And you see the oil recovery on the y-axis versus pore volumes of brine injected. And clearly at the top, we see that the low salinity brine injection produces a lot more oil than the other brines injected, and it produces a lot more oil faster. So the oil production is accelerated. We also see that seawater injection is not very beneficial. Those 2 at the bottom, those are seawater, normal seawater and modified seawater to take care of any scaling issues. So neither of them are any better than injecting low salinity brine. So that is a curiosity because many of these our fields in Norwegian continental shelf are offshore. And the reason for it not working so well is in the chemistry, but I will not go in detail on that here. In another reservoir, also at high temperature, we have performed core floods experiments again with formation water, seawater, and low salinity water. And again, we see that low salinity water produces a lot more oil much faster. And also a curiosity is if you look at the middle graph, if I change the picture actually, then you can see that there is no low salinity water injection, low salinity EOR potential after seawater injection. So you see both the bottom one and the middle one, there is no extra oil produced with low salinity after seawater. But you can see if you inject the low salinity from day one, there is a huge amount of oil to gain. Then a third reservoir on the Norwegian continental shelf, high temperature. 2 cores, they both show that the low salinity water injection is slightly more beneficial than the seawater injection. In this case, it's not a huge amount, but still there's a couple of $1,000 there. This reservoir is not the best candidate with these brines that are available. But still, it has the potential of extra oil compared to seawater injection. So what is then next? You also saw from one of the first slides that there is a potential for low salinity in combination with polymer. And this is a test where we have combined low salinity and polymer. And you can see if you inject the low salinity water first, we produce a lot of oil. And if we then introduce low salinity and polymer as a hybrid model afterwards, we produce even more oil. Because we think that first we have wettability alteration with low salinity brine, and we change the wetting, we improve the sweep efficiency, we change the distribution of oil in the pores, and then we can sweep it out with the polymer afterwards. But this was done with an HPAM, and we need to look for more environmentally friendly polymers for the future. So then, is there a smart water EOR potential on the NCS? I would say yes. The laboratory work indicates potentially large EOR potential, especially if we inject smart water or low salinity water from day one. We can see accelerated oil production, and also that means lower water production with time, and that means lower total CO2 emissions. So we should look into the mineralogy, we need to understand the wettability, we need to understand the crude oil brine rock interactions, and with this knowledge we can design a good brine that can improve the oil production. So that's it for me. Thank you.
And I should say, Tina, there will be potential for questions as well.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, Tina, she is ready to answer all of your questions after our last speaker. And water, polymer, and CO2, that should be the three keywords for our last speaker today. And then we need to go to France and to Mahmoud, Ould, Metidji. And he is a research and development manager at SNF France and an expert of polymer fluiding projects. Reducing carbon intensity while maximizing oil recovery with polymer enhanced oil recovery. Wow, that's a grown-up sentence. And if you wonder why Mahmoud Ould Metidji is so skilled, well, he worked 3 years in Norway. He was in the Institute of Energy Technology and at the IOR Center in Stavanger. So let's talk about polymer.
Hello everyone, my name is Mahmoud Ould Metidji. I'm research scientist at SNF France. I'm really pleased to be there today to present you this study on reducing carbon intensity while maximizing oil recovery with Polymer-EOR. If we look at the energy sector greenhouse emissions, we have experienced the biggest drop in global energy-related CO2 emissions, which fell by 5.8%. While the energy demand dropped by 4% in 2020. We could expect a rapid rebound in the energy demand after the COVID crisis. So 2021 and beyond energy demand will strongly depend on transition regulations and industries to follow better practices. There is a real need for efficient ways for recovering resources while reducing environmental footprint. This to achieve the net zero emission goal by 2050 set in the Paris Agreement. Polymer-EOR or polymer flooding acts on the viscosity using water-soluble polymers. Polymer flooding is well known for enhancing oil recovery while speeding up the oil production peak in some cases. Polymer flooding is an excellent technology for water-flooded mature reservoirs since they already have all the infrastructures required to deploy this technology. Polymer flooding reduces the water cut in the short and middle term. So the objectives of this study were to assess for the carbon footprint of both polymer flooding and water flooding and compare. It was also to look at the impact of the reduction in water consumption on the CO2 emissions and apply this to a field case. So we had to seek for some of the data into the literature. So the study, we had also to study the impact, we wanted to study the impact on the project economics. So the workflow we have followed was first to define the system boundaries by identifying the main CO2 emission contributor all along the oil production chain, also to establish the assumptions, to narrow down the comparison scope. Then we determined the emission factor. We had first to define the emission scopes, estimate the emission factor, for example, for the oil field chemicals versus the polymer. Also look at the emission factor related to the transport, especially for the polymer. So we took some of these values from the French transport code. And then we looked also at the energy consumption of each element identified during the assessment of the system boundaries. And this strongly depends on the country, since we are talking about electricity. And even for the emission factor, you have to look at the regulations of each country. So we applied this successfully to a field case, and we compared the emission factor relative to the water flooding versus polymer flooding. And as I told you before, we looked at the impact on the economics. The carbon intensity reduction is mainly driven by the reduction in water cut in our case. So there is two ways to look at this. The first is the so-called one-off method. It's a basic comparison of the water cut before and during the during the polymer flooding operation. So it's a comparison between 2 points in the time, considering a void replacement ratio of 1, meaning that the injection rate is equal to the production rate. So if you take a 90% water cut, this will mean that you will need 9 barrels of water to produce 1 barrel of oil. If you now apply polymer flooding and you reduce the water cut down to 70%, you will then need 2.3 barrels of water to produce 1 barrel of oil. The second method is called the integral method. So this method is a comparison of the water cut profile during water flooding alone versus polymer flooding. This method is much more accurate on the CO2 saving determination since it's a cumulative method. So the same principle than for the one-off method, the water cut reduction drives the savings. So we are focusing on that method today, and we'll see how we have applied this to some data available in the literature. Concerning the system boundaries, in the case of water flooding, you will need a fresh water supply, a water treatment unit. You will then spend some energy and you will have some CO2 emission related to the pumping operation of the fluids into the reservoir. And then for the lifting of the fluids, you will then need to add some oil-filled chemicals, both at the producer and injector to de-risk the operation. And then you will have a last step of fluid separation to separate the gas from the oil and the water. So we have made some assumptions here to narrow down the scope of comparison. So we had no gas production, so the gas production rate was set on 0, and then we were not considering the fluid separation step, since all the energy consumption related to that is really specific of each field, and to get access to those data, I mean, it's really complicated. So in the case of polymer flooding, you need to add a polymer injection unit, which is represented here by this orange square. Then you will have some energy related to the manufacturing and transport of the polymer. During our study, we have assessed that we were reaching carbon neutrality when considering the reduction in consumption of oil-filled chemicals versus transport and manufacturing of the polymer. And this regardless of the scope of emission considered. So, to establish the different emission factors, we have followed the Greenhouse Gases Protocol, which is a standardized framework for measuring and managing emissions. So there is basically 3 scopes in that protocol. We are only considering scope 1 and scope 2 in our case, since the first scope requires much more data that we don't have. So the first scope is related to the direct emissions. The second scope is related to the indirect emissions, which include basically energy supply, generation of purchased energy, and so on. So if we look at only at scope 1 and we compare the oil-filled chemicals emission factor versus the polymer powder emission factor, we can see that this value is almost twice higher for the oil-filled chemicals, and the same if we apply scope 1 plus scope 2. In the case of scope 2, that will strongly depend on the factory location. We are talking about the electricity consumption to produce the polymer. So then if you're in China, you will get a much higher emission factor than in France, since we are not generating the electricity through the same way. So we found this really interesting field case in the literature, which was a Polymer-EOR project in Milne Point field in Alaska. So actually all the data, the production and simulation data were matching pretty well. So all the data are available on the Department of US Energy website. So the main progresses that they have observed in 2019 was that the incremental oil rate has nearly doubled. And also the water cut has been reduced from 70 to 20%. So the good thing with that case was that it was pretty close to the assumption we've made, is what it was focused only on one injection well, and the injection rate was set equal to the production rate, which was about 2,400 barrels per day with no gas production. So we applied the integral method. So here you have this figure representing the CO2 emission in kilogram versus the oil production in barrel. Actually, there is 2 ways to look at this figure, either at ISO CO2 emissions. So if you look at the same amount of emission of CO2, we can see clearly that the polymer flooding here is the orange curve, Through polymer flooding, you have gained about 2.2 million barrels of oil compared to the water flooding. If we now look at this figure on terms of ISO production, so same amount of barrel of oil produced, we can see that by applying polymer flooding, the savings are about 5,600 tons of CO2. So the production time has also decreased. So for the ISO production case, we took as a reference 10 years of water flooding. So we can see that the production time has dropped down to 2.6 years by applying polymer flooding. If we now look at the water data and the CO2 emission data per barrel of oil produced, we can clearly see that the injected and produced water dropped drastically. Also concerning the CO2 emissions, it's a 70% gain. So the input data used to apply our method were as follow. We used the standard SNF polymer produced in the US with a certain concentration and the pressure on the polymer injection unit with a certain depth. And then we took the water cut that we found in the simulation report. And for the transport, we applied both road and rail emission factor relative to the North America zone. So if we look at the final balance for this interesting Milne point case, the biggest CO2 savings were both on the lifting, water treatment, and on the pumping operations. And actually we can clearly see that we are reaching carbon neutrality when considering the reduction in emission from the consumption of oil-filled chemicals versus polymer. On terms of economics, this is just an approximation, but if you take the value reported here on this slide, we can see that the final balance, in the final balance, it's about $3.6 million savings by applying polymer flooding, plus 7.4 years of savings on operations that are not considered there. So to conclude, polymer flooding allows reducing CO2 emissions. So we apply both the integral and one-off method, and we saw that the integral method was much more accurate on the CO2 emissions determination. And it can also it can be used to determine some of the economics indicators, such as return on investment and so on. The emission factor related to polymer transport and manufacturing were largely compensated by the reduction in oil-filled chemical consumption. So we were reaching carbon neutrality, and this regardless of the scope of emissions studied. The main components responsible for emission factor with 20 to 30% each were the pumping, lifting, and water treatment steps. So concerning the economics, we saw that polymer flooding is economic even in a low oil price environment. In Milne Point, oil production can be increased by more than 100% for $3 to $6 per extra barrel of oil. I would like to thank especially Guillaume Dupuis for his help and support for preparing this presentation, but also the National IOR Center of Norway for giving me the opportunity to present this work here today, and SNF. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I will be really pleased to answer your question if you have any.
Thank you, Mahmoud.
I am Tine Bredal, and I have been here at the IOR Center for 2 years. My background is in petroleum geoscience, and my main work is related to reservoir characterization on micron and nanoscale. I do also some experimental work with triaxial cells. I do flood pure calcite and dolomite powder in triaxial cells, where we inject them with different compositions of fluids under reservoir conditions. And I further analyze this material and try to highlight differences in both texture and mineralogy, and link this back to the brine that we injected and also to its geomechanical response. And I believe that when we mask this purity of the calcite and the dolomite, we can compare this to real reservoir chalk, which normally have some clay minerals. And thereby we can more accurately produce some input to modeling.
Well, close to 4:30, and we are soon finished about day 1 at this IOR conference. Well, it's day 2 for those who attended the Workability Symposium yesterday. We will be back tomorrow, but Ying, Guo, the director, the boss, the chief of the IOR Center. What do you say now? You have to sum up.
Yeah, that's my job for today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Torgeir. I think I'm very pleased to see the session went very well, except at the last minute with the last questions to Mahmoud.
My fault.
Otherwise, technically, it has been working perfectly, very nice. And also, I really enjoyed the program for today. And I think the organizing committee has made a great job with the perspectives from industry, from government, from NPD, and also from science point of view. So it contains all the elements that I enjoy greatly. So I would like to thank both the presenters, the organizers, and the technical people for such a great organization of the meeting for today. I have some summaries of the content. I think I will start from the last session, which is more technical. And I really enjoy both all three persons demonstrating the technology on smart water, on low salt water feasibilities with the field examples, and also with some calculations. I like the UK's example with Clare Ridge, where there are real experiences from field implementation. They are ahead of Norway, and Bilal presented the way of planning the operations and the monitoring, surveillance, and how to maximize or optimize the operations is very useful. So thank you, Bilal, for that. And Tina's question, I mean, we are colleagues, Tina, and we are in discussion all the time. But I think the question is still unanswered. If UK can do it, why not Norway? Yesterday, we had a very good seminar on wettability. So, of course, there were a lot of technical challenges. But I think you showed very many possibilities on the Norwegian continental shelf. So I really think that the research will be more focused on how we can deploy the technology in our Norwegian fields. Mahmoud showed also how we can relate the EOR, in this particular case, polymer, to the reduction of CO2. And that's very, very interesting, and with a concrete example. It's very encouraging that we can demonstrate the emission effect. So thank you all very much for this very interesting session. But going back to the very beginning, first of all, I think I really appreciate our minister, Tina Bru, who appreciated the work at IOR Center. She even said, no matter in what form we will continue after the center ending this year, she wished us good luck. And she also mentioned the importance of the IOR and also our knowledge, which are relevant to CCS, to other energy forms. Basically, we can contribute a lot for the transition into the new renewable energy or sustainable energy future. So, very good. And also from NPD, the Petroleum Directorate of Norway shows more details about the remaining resources in oil and gas, and also other industry which are coming. It could be wind power, it could be CCS, hydrogen, ocean mining, reminding us that our knowledge really beyond IOR, we can contribute much more. So keep the good work. I really enjoy listening to the young people and from their perspective, Sandra and Karoline. So they, for instance, they see that we need to work on energy solutions, new solutions, and more cleaner solutions. So that's very important, and also reminding us that industry needs to change, right? To keep up to the new sustainable energy future in order to keep the young people, the young talent in the industry. So very interesting. And the session for reservoir utilization for new energies or hydrogen or CCS, very, very, very interesting, I think. So it shows really the industry are ready. Oh, that's my time out. So the industry is ready and, sorry. And the technology are very well developed, ready to be deployed. So we hope that the future we'll see the future with a lot more activities, and that's also where we can contribute with our knowledge. I enjoyed very much this new company, Horisont Energi, with a very concrete project. I would say very challenging, but very interesting to lead where the industry could go. So I hope I will follow the project in the future. So anyway, it's a great day, and I hope you also enjoy the day for today. And we have another session tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. Now I will leave the final word of the day to Torgeir.
Yeah. What more is there to say? Tomorrow, Ying will be back. You will be back. 1 o'clock. I think I will sleep in this chair, and tomorrow morning I will wake up, and you will be there as well. So 1 o'clock tomorrow. Don't forget to be there on your laptop, mobile phone, or whatever it is, together with 4 new hours with this IOR conference. See you then at 1 o'clock.